1st of November, Rabbi Levitt substituted by Sendrick. Gemorrah.
Okay, apologize for the delay. Welcome, everyone. Apologize for the delay. I think I'm on board. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay,
Is Phil coming?
Yes, Phil,
great.
here in a
We
second.
will be carrying on in Bava Kama, Perek HaChovel. Yesterday, we worked in the sugya of HaChovel Bas Ketano. I started to put together a chart or two. Wanted to bring up the first chart so we'll all be on the same page. Let's try to share this. One moment. Okay, and here we are.
Okay, right.
This will be,
Oh,
here we have three charts.
wow.
Everybody have it on board? The first chart is the 5 types of sheves, the 5 types of payment for chavola. Nezek, tsar, ripu, sheves, and boshes. The charts are going left to right. We're right now discussing in the first column, the shita of Rav. We're going to see later on the Amud that Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan also get involved. Reish Lakish agrees with Rav that for the main part, chavola payments go to the girl. At the end of this Amud, we have Rabbi Yochanan, who says that chavola payments go to the father. Over the course of the Gemorah's discussion, if you just zoom down to the payment of sheves, while at first we believed that Rav holds that all the payment goes to the girl, Abaye tells us that sheves, loss of wages, will belong to the father. If a person injures another person's minor girl, the sheves payments specifically will go to the father. Good so far? Second point, it's important not to mix up sheves and shevach neurim. Sheves is not wages. Sheves is compensation for lost wages. Wages themselves, when a girl, produces handiwork and sells it in the marketplace, or she's hired out and she brings home a paycheck, everybody agrees that that goes to the father. The discussion here is, what about if a girl gets injured and needs to be compensated for lost wages? What's the din there? At first, we thought that Rav holds it should go to the girl. Abaye stepped in and said, no, that too goes to the father. Okay. Good so far. Now for the second part of the Chazara. I started to summarize in a chart the points that are covered in the 2 braisos. Yesterday we saw 2 braisos about injury to children, sons or daughters, minors or adults. Let's see if we can focus in on the differences between the 2 braisos. In the first braisa, it doesn't discuss all of the cases. It discusses an adult son, a minor son, and a minor daughter. To an adult, if the father injures an adult son, we said he must pay immediately. If he injures a minor son, he pays to a trust fund, as will be described at the end of the daf. If he injures his minor daughter, the Brisa says he is exempt. How will Rav explain that? According to Rav, as explained by Abaye, when it said the Brisa says that he's exempt, that means he's exempt only from sheves, because after all, sheves is coming to him. However, for the other payments, he might be liable. It's important to keep in mind, remember the first chart. Not everybody agrees with Rav. Rabbi Yochanan holds that everything is coming to the father. Although Abaye exempts the father only from sheves, that would be only according to Rav. according to Rabbi Yochanan, he might exempt the father even for more. But at the moment, we're discussing Rav. Let's go to the next box in the chart. If a minor daughter is injured by a third party, the Brisa says he must pay to the father. So Abaye steps in again. When the Brisa says that he pays to the father, according to Rav, the most payments are to the girl, as explained by Abaye. This refers only to Sheves. Only Sheves is paid to the father. The other four payments of Nezek, Sa'ar, Ripui, and Boshes would be paid to the girl. That's Brisa 1. Good so far? Let's go to Brisa number 2. Here, most of the boxes are filled in. All the boxes are filled in. I think the Brisa begins with the third party. It doesn't make any difference whether the child is male or female. To an adult, to a third party, to an adult son or an adult daughter, pay immediately. To a minor son or a minor daughter, pay to trust. If injured by a father, he is exempt. That's what the Brisa says. Now let's take a look at the boxes and see what the Gemara is going to have to resolve. Where do we have a contradiction between these two Brisas? The chart should make it pretty clear. Can anybody see? What boxes will give us a stira? Will give us a contradiction between these two Brisas?
The adult son.
Adult son. All right, very good. That's the first one the Gemara points out. Brisa number 1 says pay immediately. If the father himself injures an adult son, the Brisa number 1 says pay immediately. And Brisa number 2 says he is exempt. Are there any other contradictions?
The minor son.
Okay, very good. It's really the same. It's basically the same contradiction.
Yes.
Right, except that a minor son, you can't, he'll go spend it on candy, so we have to put it in a trust fund. Right. Another contradiction is going to be the minor daughter, which is the topic of our sugya. That according to the first Brisa, the etzem going to the father, whereas according to the second Brisa, paying to trust is in essence paying the girl, right? We're putting it aside for her. Those are the two issues the Gemara is going to have to deal with. And in fact, the Gemara does so. Let's see a little bit of the Gemara inside. And then after we review the Gemara a little bit, we'll have another chart. It's going to get a little more complicated. Another chart to illustrate the Gemara's answer. So now that we have the chart in front of us, let's review a little bit. Let me read a little bit, starting from the two dots. The two dots are 7 lines from the top. With no godo, yitin lo miyad. Everybody have it? If we're talking about an adult son, shall he pay immediately? That's this box up here in the first Brisa. Uriminu. Here's the second Brisa. Hachova b'bonav b'bnotav shel achirim. When injured by a third party, Gidolin, yitin lehem miyad, kitanim yasel lehem segula. B'bonav u'b'bnotav shelo, pater. When injured by a father, he is exempt. Now the Gemara has an answer. Kan k'shesomchin al shulchano, kan k'she'en somchin al shulchano. When an adult son is dependent on his father's table, he is essentially a katan in regards to monetary matters. Therefore, if he injures an adult son, he has to pay himself. He is exempt. Whereas Brisa number 1 The father did not support his son. The son has to pay for his own food. And therefore, he has to pay the son just like he would pay any other Jew in case of injury. Let me bring up the second chart now. Let's see that on the chart. Right, screen. Ooh, this gets a little more complicated. Brisa number 1. When an adult son is injured by the father, pay immediately. The Gemorrah explains, when is that the case? When he is not dependent on the father's table. By extension, this entire brisa, we will have to explain as a case when the daughter or son, whether adult or minor, is not dependent on the father's table. But right now we're focusing on this box. Brisa number 2, when injured by father, and the brisa says exempt, the Gemorrah explains, when is that so? When he is dependent on the father's table. Hopefully we'll get to Tosfos today. We'll have many more details to put into the chart. All right. Let's look at the next phrase in the Gemara. That will explain exactly the other box that we pointed out. The box of the minor daughter injured by a third party. All right, I'm continuing in the Gemara where I left off. It's right across from Tosos Kan. The words are ihachi at the end of the line. Everybody got it? Ihachi emoseifa. If that's the way you resolve the two brisos, let's look at the end. Hachovo bebito ktano potter. This is the end of brisa number 1. A father injures his own minor daughter, he is exempt. V'lo od. A third party would have to pay to the father. Why is the father exempt? Why is a third party paid to the father? Don't they have to pay to the girl? If this whole brisa is when not dependent on the father's table, so she needs to eat. Now let's skip down to the Gemara's answer. We had a little bit of a tangent here, if you remember, at the end yesterday. Let's skip to the third wide line. The first word on the line, Kidda Omer. The first word on the third wide line. Kidda Omer b'reider Rav Ula lo nitzcha elo laha'adafa. This is only necessary for extra. If there's extra sheves payment, based in Paskins, due to the circumstances, she will have X amount of days of lost work. And in the end, something developed, she had fewer days of lost work. So there's extra money to go around. That will go to the father. Let's see that on the chart now. In brisa number 1, a minor daughter injured by a father is exempt. Now, why is he exempt? Rav says most payments go to the girl, not to the father. So according to Rav, what we said earlier in the Gemara, according to Rav, as explained by Abaye, what is he exempt from? He's exempt only from Sheves. However, since we now establish the brisa as she is not dependent on her father's table, I'm just reading out the box here. He is exempt, the father is exempt only from the extra Sheves. The very, very limited amount that he's exempt from. The Sheves, which is not extra, the actual lost days of work, that will go to the girl because her father's not feeding her. And all the other payments of injury, Nezek, Sa'ar, Ripui, and Boshes, that will certainly go to the girl because we're explaining according to Rav, who holds, in essence, payment for injury should go to the girl, not to the father. We have severely limited the scope of this brisa. And why did we do so? Because we have to resolve these two brisos. Okay, hang in there. Let's just go to the same box in brisa number 2. Minor daughter injured by a father. That fits very well. The brisa says exempt. The Gemara explains why is he exempt? When dependent on the father's table, and we don't have to get into a case of ha'adafa. We don't have to get We don't have to go into a case of a ha'adafa when the father is exempt. The father is always exempt. Why that's the case? So then we will, the Gemara will discuss in the next few lines. I hope this chart helped a little bit because we have a lot of parameters going on here, and we'll refer back to the chart as we go through the Gemara. Any questions so far? There's a lot to bite off at the beginning of share, but I hope the chart will help us as we go through. Maybe now is the time to pick up where we left off yesterday. What do you say, gentlemen?
Where are we then?
All right, where we left off yesterday is, I believe it's B'mai Ukimta, on the fourth wide line, second word on the line, right after Ha'adafa.
1, 2, 3, 4.
87B2, the second paragraph, left-hand side.
On the left-hand side, second paragraph. Oh, I see.
Okay, who's up first per reading? Lou, you with us?
Sure, where are we?
Okay, we're up to B'mai Ukimta.
87B2, left-hand side, second paragraph. Gemorrah challenges the explanation. My ukimta the kamaisa. In what have you established the first brisa?
Sorry, Lou, let me just jump you back up for a few lines. I'm looking for B'mai Ukimta L'Basraisa. With what have you established the second brisa? I believe it's a few lines earlier. No, it's actually a few lines later. B'mai Ukimta L'Kamaisa we discussed earlier. We resolved the two brisos by saying that the difference in who's supporting the child. Is the child samuch al shulchan aviv or not? So it's actually, we're looking for a later paragraph that begins, B'mai ukimta levasvaisa.
It's in the right-hand column, 87B2, the last paragraph, right-hand side. Thank you. The
Okay.
Gemorrah now challenges its explanation of the second brisa. B'mai okimta levasraisa. In what manner have you established the later brisa? Bismuchin al shulchano. In a case where the children are dependent on the father's table. Gedolim retained lahem miyad. Adults give to them immediately. Itanim yaaseh lahem tefullah. Minors make for them a trust. Amai, why? The hem boy a the mace they. It should be given to their father.
That means the question is in the case when a third party caused an injury.
Right. Otherwise,
Again, we want it to be parallel.
father.
If the father is exempt because the money is coming to him, the money is coming to the father, then when the third party causes an injury, the money should also be coming to the father. There's something very not parallel about this brisa. How come when the father injures a child that's dependent on the father's table, the father is exempt? If the third party injures a child, they have to pay the child. an adult in the packet, the child in the trust fund, but you have to pay the child. Why? You should have to pay the father. That's all. Father's feeding. Okay, great. Let's see an answer. Please continue, though.
Amrei, they said, Ki ka kafid. When does the father mind? B'midi dika chasar. When it concerns something that causes loss. B'midi de asa alma. But when it concerns something that's from the outside, lo kafid, he does not mind.
Very good. Let's think about that for a minute. If the father is feeding the children, there are some times that he will mind if the child brings home money and keeps it for himself, like the sugya and Bava Metzia about an aveda, about a lost object. The father will mind, right? That lost object should go to the father because he's makpid. He says, if I'm feeding you, you should be looking out to bring home profit for the house. However, here it's different. When is he makpid? B'midi dika chaser. Something that will cause the father himself to lose money. If the father has to pay out of pocket and reimburse his child for the injury, that he's makpid, that he doesn't want to do. How should we translate b'midi da'osi me'alma? Unexpected revenue, right? Revenue from other people. An unexpected chavola payment, and that he's not makpid. He didn't have to pay out of pocket for it. Therefore, he lets it go to the child. What did we just answer? We just answered, how come in Brisa number 2 on the screen, when injured by the father, the payment essentially goes to the father and not to the child. When injured by a third party, the father allows the payment to go to the child. He didn't lose any sleep over it. He didn't lose any cash over it. All right, let's carry on to the next line. We're going to see the example I just gave of the Aveda. The Gemara says it's not a good example. Lou, would you like to continue?
Amrei, they said,
one line under. I think we're up to Vaha Mitzia. Maybe it's one line above. It's a new question, Vaha Mitzia. But what about a found object? Yes.
Concerning a found object, Demei Alma Ka'aseh Lahu, which comes to the children from the outside, Ka Kafid, and he minds.
He minds.
What
He
about
would
a
mind
lost
if the
object?
child kept it for himself.
The father minds.
Yeah,
That seems to contradict what we just said.
right.
So the Gemara revises
Okay.
its criteria. Amrei, they said, Ravsa de Kayase Lahu Me Alma. Profit that comes from the outside, Veles Lahu Tahara de Gufaihu de Gavaihu. And concerning which they had no physical pain. Bava that comes from the outside, but they had no physical pain, kafid. Father minds. Aval, kavala, but an injury, is lay tahara de gufaihu, that there is in it pain to the body. Me alma ka'aseh lahu, and it came from the outside. Lo kafid, he does not mind.
All right. Now we just drew a distinction between a found object and chavola payment. There are two cases when the father will mind, and one case when the father will not mind. To sum up, the last two stages of the Gemorrah. If either the father has to pay out of pocket, then the father will mind. Or a found object where the child didn't have any physical pain in finding the found object, then the father will mind if the child keeps it. It's only in the case of chavola where the child did suffer physical pain and it came from somebody else, only then will the father not mind if the child keeps it for himself. Right? What does that help us? That helps us to resolve this second brisa. This is why in this entire line, second line of the chart in the brisa number 2, when injured by a third party, the payment is going to the child. Why is that? Because the father will not mind if the child keeps it. The father didn't pay, the child had pain over it, and therefore the child can keep it. All right, we're still very much in the job of resolving the two braisaos against each other. Gentlemen, any other volunteers for reading? Thank you, Lou.
We're up to what?
You're
We're
welcome.
up to V'ha Hosam, a new question. But over there, V'ha Hosam. Anybody have the article with the?
I want to find it in the Gemorrah, not in the article. I see it in the article. I'm trying to do the Gemorrah is better to me than to do.
Okay, it's about 8 lines from the bottom.
The Gufo, now that there is going to be pain. There is pain on her body. Uma alma. And it comes lace Ulmala copy, and on it teaches that it comes to her that it teaches love the copy, and he does mind. He does mind on this case.
Let's look back at brisa number 1, right? Hosam is brisa number 1 over there, right? In the previous brisa. The Isla Tzara de Gufa, there's injury. And me alma ka'asila, as you said, it's coming from other people. Ka'asi is to come, right? It's coming from other people. The kakapit.
He does mind.
He does mind. If you look back at that line of the chart in brisa number 1, when injured by a third party to a minor daughter, the payment goes to the father. Why is that? She suffered pain. I thought her father doesn't mind about these things. Okay, very good, Philip. Right. So now it's going to quote the relevant line from that brayta.
The containing the taught the low owed and furthermore also low owed ella rather afilo acherin shechavalo lo chayivim retain aviv. That if other people wounded her, he would be chayav to give the money to the father.
Very good. Now we have a contradiction between these two brisos. Is a father makpid or is it a father not makpid in such a case? There's a fascinating answer coming up in the Gemorrah. Okay, Phil, you want to continue? Amri.
Amri. So they said, Asim there, the Gabra Kaped, who the man is the one who minds. The Ha'ain smoking al Shulchanah, because he's not being supported on his table.
He's not feeding his kids.
Yeah.
Look what kind of a father he is.
So
Okay.
I guess he doesn't mind if he's not feeding him. Somebody they'll feed him, he won't have to pay. A filu, the midi, even immediately, the ace lay lalala, that there is money from outside. Copy, he would be he minds.
He minds. He wants that money.
That's their part, the hustle. The kacha here, the lav gabra, but the man is that he is not makbid. Who smoking, that he is al shulchan, he is supporting him from his table.
And therefore, Kika Kapid, since he's an easygoing sort of guy, he feeds his kids. So what will be his attitude regarding the Chavola payment? Okay, let's jump back in. Kika Kapid.
Copy that now that he does mine, the midi means the kaserle, that something is missing. So it's a
Good.
lacking payment. He's not getting full payment. He's only getting some of it. Midi the east lay lamala, and if there's money coming from outside, then he wouldn't mind.
Right. Paying himself to be lacking in his own pocket, that he wouldn't do. Right. He won't pay his own child that he injured himself, because then he has to shell out money from his own pocket. But for payments that come from somebody else, he does not mind. So the Gemara has a fascinating answer. Let's be consistent in the terms of the psychology of the father. Since the first brisa is when the father is not feeding his children, he says, you kids can manage on your own. He's a makbid sort of a guy. He doesn't part with his money very easily. Therefore, even when a third party injury payment gets a letter in the mail, from a lawyer, your child is entitled to indemnity payments for such and such an accident that happened in school. All right, I'll take that money. I need that money. So he keeps it. But if he's a father that does support his kids, so then he's a little more easygoing with his money. And again, if a third party injured his child, and therefore it's both not out of his own pocket, and the child suffered pain in the process, he will cede that. He will be willing to begrudge that money to his children. He'll let the children have it. All right. So I think this is indicated on the chart. In the first chart, brisa number 1, I wrote, such a father will demand extra revenue, even that which came at the price of physical pain, and therefore injury by a third party will go to the father. Rav will limit that to extra sheves, but there's something extra going to the father. Whereas in the second brisa, injured by a third party, across the board, it's going to the child, whether immediately or to a trust fund. Why? The Gemara says such a father who is supporting his children will not demand extra revenue that came at the price of physical pain. Okay, that should resolve any difference between the two brisos. Not all the boxes are filled in the first brisa, so you have to assume it would parallel the second one, or the other boxes that are filled in. I only filled in the boxes that were explicit, but we could try to use svara to fill in the rest. All right. Thank you, Philip. Let's take it a few lines further before we go to, I don't know if we'll have time for Tosfos today, but maybe let's carry on. The rest of the sugya does not have such intense calculations and cheshbonot. We're just going to fill in some of the gaps. Roy, would you like to read a little bit?
Okay, from
We're up to Mai Segula.
about the trust.
What is a trust?
What is a trust?
Before Wall
Right.
Street was invented, what is a trust?
Yeah, nice to good. What is a trust? So the Gemara has two opinions. Rav Chisda Omer, Sefer Torah. It is a Torah scroll.
The
Yeah.
best investment.
Beg your pardon?
That's the best investment. If we have money that we have to set aside for a minor, buy for him a Torah scroll.
The assailant should purchase a Torah scroll, said the art scroll, from which the young victim can study. Rava Barav Huna Omer, Rava Barav Huna said, well, it is a palm tree. Ta'achil mini timray, from which the child can eat dates.
The child will be able to eat the dates. Again, like we just said in the Pele Yoetz, the principle remains and the child can eat the fruits in the meantime.
Right. So finish it off then.
Sure.
The Gemara returns to the question of who receives the compensation for an injury sustained by a minor daughter. V'chein Omer Reish Lakish. So Reish Lakish said, Lo zikasei Torah, La'av of Alai Shivas.
Shabbat.
Sheva, Neorim, Bilvad. The Torah granted to the father only the gains of the girl's stage of Naras.
Very good. Let's explain that again. This is exactly the same as Rav said. Only the paycheck, but not any of the payments for injury. That goes to the girl herself. All right. Now, for the first time, we're going to have a dissenting opinion.
The Rabbi Yochanan Omer, but Rabbi Yochanan said, the father is entitled even to the compensation for a wound that she suffered. The Gemara challenges Rabbi Yochanan's ruling and says, B'tzio selka da'asoch. Does it enter your mind that the father is entitled to compensation for her wound? Afilu Rabbi Eliezer, why even Rabbi Eliezer, lo kamibaya le elo chavala. Even Rabbi Eliezer inquired about a serious injury, only about a serious injury, just concerned with a serious injury.
Right. Or a permanent injury, disabilitating injury.
The afachat so mikas pop, which lessens her value. Aval b'tzia dalo afachat so mikas pop, but concerning a wound, it does not lessen her value. Lo kemipa ya lay. We did not inquire. And it says here the Gemara clarifies Rabbi Yochanan's ruling. Omer Rabbi Yosan bar Chanina, Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina said, Shepherd Sa'a before Nea the Af Chaso Mekaspo. Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina said, Rabbi Yochanan speaks of where the assailant wounded her in her face and lessened her value. So the father therefore collects the damage payment.
Right. Technically, it's only a wound. It might not be permanent or disabilitating, but still it falls in the category not of tsar, pain, or boshes, embarrassment, but of nezek, of damage itself. An obvious wound, a wound on the face, is like nezek. It's like an injury which limits mobility or function. Why? Rashi says on top, might be the only Rashi we have time for today. The afchasei mikaspe. This top Rashi on Peichet Amud Aleph. The afchasei mikaspe v'harei biyodo lemocha. This wound, even if superficial, has diminished her value because he has the power to sell her. A father has the right to sell his daughter as an Amma Ha'ivriya, and if she has an obvious wound, that will lessen her value. So that's the case where Rabbi Yochanan is saying that the nezek payment, the damage itself, will go to the father. And remember, that's only Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish and Rav from the previous Amud, they hold that only Sheves goes to the father. Nezek goes to the girl. Right? Whether it's true nezek or a wounded face, which is akin to nezek, that will be part of the Vachlokas Rav and Reish Lakish. I put it on I believe that was on the first chart on the first page. All right, what else should we clarify for today? Even Rabbi Yochanan doesn't talk about things like tsar and boshes, bodily pain. It could be that he agrees with Reish Lakish that should go to the girl. Right? I as far as I could tell, the point of machlokas between Rav and Reish Lakish on one side and Rabbi Yochanan on the other side is nezek, loss of value, or that which is similar to loss of value, such as pitzia v'foneha.
With
Yes.
regards to the definition of trust, is that taken further later on?
Once again,
Beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Please say again. Mike.
With regards to the definition of a trust, is that taken further later on?
It's a good question. I don't think so. This might be the source in Shas. You know, what is the most essential need of a child? Is it school books? You know, they didn't have a printing press back then. They learned from the Sefer Torah. That is what the child needs, you know, on a daily basis to learn. So Rav Chisda says the Sefer Torah, and Rabbi Barav Huna says it's monetary property, but the type of property which yields a yearly revenue, yearly dividends, such as a palm tree from which he can eat the fruit, eat the dates. This is probably quoted throughout Shas as a definition of a trust. It looks like we're passing like the latter opinion. Nowadays, you'd have to ask the investment experts. You want to do something with not to risk the principal. Right? You want to be able to make sure the principal. You don't want the money to run away. You don't want to invest in a donkey and have the donkey die. You know, it needs to be land. It needs to be nadlan, but something which yields a regular and dependable profit as well.
Okay.
All right. I wanted to get into Tosfos a little bit, and I did put a few tidbits onto the chart. Hopefully, in the in the coming shiurim. I don't know if it's still available online, but however sharing works, but hopefully it'll be useful. As far as I know, this is you know, the regular Maggid Shir will be coming back tomorrow unless I hear otherwise, but it's been a pleasure learning with you gentlemen, and
Thank you
Shalom
very
Matzliach.
much.
Same here. Very
Thank you.
Take care, thank you.
Have a great
All
day.
right, be well and prosper.
Amen. Thank you for your brachos. V'chein lemar.
Okay, so. Thank you. Leave. All right. Oops. Where are we? All right, fine.
Yachil.
Hmm.